Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. We find ourselves on this glorious Saturday laughing at Humza Yousaf. And if you find yourself on this glorious Saturday anywhere in Dundee, go along to Caird Hall and join in the festivities, because that is where the SNP are holding their Independence Jamboree, where a load of sad people who'll never get what they want are listening in rapture to a man who knows nothing. And yet, whilst there, you could heckle him, and you wouldn't be the first. It's a closed event. Only SNP members can get in. And yet, he was still heckled. That's because he used to be the health secretary. He was the health secretary that did nothing about Sam El-Jamel. And this heckler got up and started complaining and moaning and heckling about the lack of action over this doctor who continued to serve as a brain surgeon, and even though he'd had loads of complaints, he was butchering patients at the Dundee Royal Infirmary. And of course this went on for quite a number of years, and there was lots of complaints, and it landed on the desk of the then Health Secretary, Humza Yousaf, who did like Humza Yousaf does with everything that's a problem. Absolutely nothing. Well, he was confronted today in the middle of his big speech, and he had to stop. He had to deal with it. Well, have a look at this. But it is just telling that the man can't even get off the hook in a room filled with his own supporters. It's unbelievable. What an absolute loser. Here goes. So Humza Yousaf heckled at his own independence conference, as he says the SNP will break up the UK if they win the next election. And quite clearly, no, they won't. First of all, they're unlikely to win the next election, number one. And secondly, even if they win the next election, they have no power to break up the union. They just don't. The guy lives through a mirror in an alternative reality where he thinks that when he opens his mouth, truth comes out, when all we hear is wah, 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 and a load of BS. It's ridiculous. Anyway, the First Minister revived Nicola Sturgeon's de facto referendum plan. The plan that she then put away. She created it, looked at it, went, it won't work, and put it away because it's a stupid plan. And he said an election win for the SNP would start negotiations to break up the UK. Here's how the negotiations would go. We'd like to break up the UK. No. Okay then. And that's that. But there's nothing else he can do. What's he going to do? Park his tanks on the lawn? I mean, you know, really, give it up. Anyway, so he's also said about this, if we win the next election. Well, if you lose the next election, that means independence is dead. And if you win the next election but don't get 50% of the vote, independence is dead. This is why Nicola Sturgeon didn't do it, for all her faults. And boy, does she have a list of faults. She was politically shrewd enough to know you don't put all your eggs in one very, very shaky basket. If your argument is, if you win the election, you're going for independence, it means if you don't win the election, independence is dead. And your opponents have that to beat you over the head with. And so she went, no. But of course, she's got the political nous to know that. He, on the other hand, is going, it's a great idea, because he is a complete moron. Anyway, Humza Yousaf, let's get into this now. Humza Yousaf was forced to pause his keynote speech at his own independence convention after he was heckled by a protester in the audience. The First Minister was shouted at by a victim of the disgraced Tayside doctor Sam El-Jamel, and he had to step off stage to deal with her. He actually came down himself to deal with it because he was the Health Minister. It caused a lengthy pause to proceedings while he headed out into the audience at the Caird Hall in Dundee to hear her concerns. And he urged members not to boo or jeer her while he dealt with it. Well, actually, I think I will give him a moment of credit for that. Because this woman had a genuine, an absolutely genuine reason to be making these complaints. And he didn't belittle it. He actually did step in and do it. And so I will give him that much. Got to give him that much. But anyway, he then revived his former leader's Nicola Sturgeon's de facto referendum plan, as he confirmed that an SNP victory will be taken as a mandate for independence. Which means if you don't get your victory, that's a mandate for the Union forever then. Is that your argument? He said, if we win the general election, we will take that mandate from the people, ensure we as a government are ready to negotiate our independence. But you have no legal mandate to do, because you can win an election, but you won't have 50% of the vote. And therefore, you haven't won the election. You have to define what winning means. He added that if the Nationalists won, he would set out a detailed document which will explain how they would transfer power from Westminster to Holyrood. He'd either demand a referendum or just push ahead with breaking up the UK. He can demand, that doesn't mean he's going to get, and he can just push ahead with breaking up the UK, which is sedition, and he goes to jail. Knock yourself out. We know this happens. We've seen Catalonia. The heckling moment, though, compounded a shambolic start to the flagship Skexit talking shop, as it had to be delayed due to massive queues outside as people struggled to get in because there's only one door. It's a very thin door. I can't believe people struggled to get in. A protest was also held outside by the ultra-unionist group, A Force for Good. Oh, I see, because they're unionists, they're ultra, are they? A Force for Good, who were joined by the Scottish Family Party, who, whilst I think the Scottish Family Party have an alignment in views, they are a little bit odd. They are a little bit religious-y. I think they are a little bit out to the edge. I'm not going to say they're bad, but they are a bit out to the edge. And also they're a bit restrictive in certain beliefs. But that's a different video for a different day. Anyway, Mr. Yousaf claimed that independence was within touching distance. Ah, yes, it is. If you happen to be in a country that is, say, fighting for independence, and not, say, in Scotland, where it's nowhere near touching distance, not by a long mark. As he riled up his troops, he said the only way to do it is through a legally binding referendum, which you won't be given. He declared, make no mistake. Why? We don't need to make mistakes. You make plenty. He said the SNP will absolutely fight the next election with independence front and centre. Gosh, no, tell me it ain't so. It's like everything you do is front and centre independent. You know, you can make a cup of tea without being an independent cup of tea that came from a Scottish cow, and you know, because obsession by Calvin Klein. Honestly, the SNP will absolutely fight the next election with independence front and centre of all our campaign, he said, and that's because choosing between the Tories or Tory light is no real choice at all. You haven't got a choice between Tories and Tory light. You've got a choice between Labour and Labour mad at the moment. The protester was calling for a public inquiry into the disgraced Dundee surgeon Sam Elgemel. Picture of him there. An absolute butcher of human brains. The man promoted beyond his ability and caused no end of problems. Anyway, he was accused of butchering patients for a number of years while acting as the head of neurosurgery at NHS Tayside. The First Minister has previously rebuffed these calls, back when he was the health secretary, although an independent review into the scandal has been launched. And it needs to be. Mr. Yousaf made a call to action as he attempted to build support for the Nationalists to push for another independence referendum. And when you lose that, well, you want another one, and another one, and another one. And if you do get it and you win it, will the Unionists be able to have a reunion referendum? Will you allow that? Will you hell? What's wrong with you? You can keep fighting, but it won't ever happen. Anyway, friends, I didn't get into politics, he said, simply to mitigate Westminster damage. No, that's right. You got into politics to cause way, way more damage than Westminster has ever done. He says, I believe the SNP should do much more than that. Yes, much more damage he's talking about. He says, I believe that in this election, the SNP should offer people of Scotland a manifesto for an independent Scotland, like you have done on every single previous election, and for which you've never had the manifesto. Unbelievable. He says, we know that independence is the best for Scotland's future. No, we know that it's absolutely the worst thing for Scotland's future. And we must give the people of Scotland the ability to choose that future. They've had it, and they refused. And if the SNP does win this election, then the people will have spoken. Yes, they'll have spoken, but you won't have had a majority. And if you truly, truly want it, let's put it this way. Let's give you the referendum. Let's give the referendum, and we'll say this. If you win the referendum, Scotland can have its independence. But if you lose the referendum, you disband the SNP, everyone resigns, we close down the Scottish Parliament, and we stop your stupidity and moronic ideas from ever infecting the people of Scotland again. Let's go. All or nothing. I would go with that. I would absolutely go with that. But I bet you won't, Humza Yousaf, because you are a moral coward. Anyway, he says, we will seek negotiations with the UK government on how we give a democratic effect to Scotland becoming an independent nation. You've had it. It's called a referendum, and you keep voting to remain. He says, remember, we are not the bloc on a referendum. A referendum is our plan A. Westminster's are the ones blocking it. You've had your referendum. How many referendums do you want? Do you want to keep losing them and losing them and losing them? It was, Indy 34, Indy 59. It's unbelievable how many referendums you're going to ask for until you get it. And you never will, because people aren't stupid. Anyway, so whether that democratic effect is a referendum or simply a general election itself, that is for them to answer. Well, the general election will not be a referendum, no matter how many times you say it. And there he is, look. He looks like a stick puppet, doesn't he? He's like that, And behind him is Nicola Sturgeon pushing the rods up and down. But look at that face. There's a man. There's a crushed, defeated, sad man who knows that he's standing there talking utter pish. It's funny, isn't it? The poor man, deluded. He's deluded. They really need to phone the psychiatric department of the local hospital and have him sectioned. He's a danger to himself and to others, but the others, of course, is the entire population of Scotland. I'm coming up. So there we are. In a room full of your own supporters, you get heckled. You have to stop your big speech. Then you have to get back up, restart it again. Your big speech is full of brilliant ideas, i.e. all the ideas that Nicola Sturgeon rejected because she knows how awfully bad they are. But you're going with it. Hey, good luck with that. And so your big plan is to win an election on the understanding that you're going to fight for independence. That's never been tried by the SNP before, has it? And if you win the election, you're going to have a negotiation for a referendum. How's that been working out so far? And if you don't get the referendum, then you're going to just start by dismantling the UK on your own. Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely right. The man is delusional. He needs to be on antipsychotics, really, doesn't he? But I wouldn't trust them coming from any hospital that he's ever run. Anyway, I shall finish there. Thank you very much for listening. It is funny, isn't it? And I bet it isn't even the worst of that day. But anyway, thanks very much for listening. If you like what you see and hear on the channel, please hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video. And definitely leave a like, it really helps with the metrics. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, keep watching this circus because the clowns are the best ever. And goodbye.